Yeah, Monica and Huel, this is a disturbing story on so many levels. But let me tell you that the suspect, now the defendant, claims that he didn't know he hit anybody. He didn't know that he'd done anything wrong, so he just kept going. Later, seeing the news and turning himself in, saying that it was always an accident, it was not malicious, but it was reckless. That's something that we can all agree on. We all know that we have to slow down when we're in road construction zones. And Pete Lucido, the Macomb County prosecutor, says he has a real problem with the fact that this guy may not spend any time behind bars.
The people of the state of Michigan, the prosecutor, Lucido, is saying this is not justice.
The man who hit and killed a Macomb County Road Commission worker will likely spend very little, if any, time behind bars. Martin Smith fled from the scene on I-94 in St. Clair Shores in September of 2020, but later turned himself in, claiming he didn't know he had hit anyone. He has since taken a plea deal, and under the sentencing guidelines, a judge could sentence him anywhere from 0 to 11 months.
And all you hear on the mainstream media is how racist the system is. If a brother do anything, if he jaywalk, he gonna get 20 years. We just out here trying to do our best, and we can't help the system. Everybody make mistakes, but when we make mistakes, it... And then you see cases like this. I could do 100 cases like this every day just off the news. I don't have time. The most he can get for allegedly going... And now listen, I remember one time I went through a work zone in Maryland, and I got home, and a few days later they sent me a $200-something ticket in the mail because they said I was going speeding. Like, that's some serious stuff. I was going like 30 miles an hour. But I don't believe you can hit a person, kill them, and not know. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. Now, he turned himself in, which means that he probably knew they was on to him. Don't mean that he had a change of heart, but it's just very interesting that brothers get the lightest sentences. They usually don't get any sentence. Usually it's thrown out. At the least, it'll get pled down. I mean, at the most, it'll get pled down. And all we hear about is the system's racist. And it goes unchecked. That statement goes unchecked every time.
He has since taken a plea deal, and under the sentencing guidelines, a judge could sentence him anywhere from 0 to 11 months.
We objected as to the judge following the guidelines. We don't think the guidelines are proper, and we don't think that they are reasonable at this point. It's unreasonable to give somebody 0 to 11 months when they took somebody's life.
The life he took, 26-year-old Zach Morissette. Immediately after he was killed, his family speaking with Fox 2.
Could you imagine if this was the other way? Could you imagine? And the person was getting 11 months at the most. The reason the guy would be getting 11 months at the... First of all, you would already have demonstrations. There would already be this. We would already know this guy's name. Crump would be in the vicinity somewhere. Sharpton would be a black life is not worth nothing. All that would be going on. And then you throw on top of it the judge would be shaking in his boots. The judge would have to give the guy 11 months. The judge would probably give him 11 months in one day. Like, look, I did even more. I did everything I could.
The life he took, 26-year-old Zach Morissette. Immediately after he was killed, his family speaking with Fox 2.
He was a big Raiders fan, big Alabama fan, a blue-collar guy, and he was just a good man.
The loved ones are walking out of a courtroom. They don't feel that they got justice. And if you're not going to get justice, then what good is the system?
The judge can go above the sentencing guidelines if he or she finds there are substantial and compelling reasons to do so.
I think that we need a discussion to be had about sentencing guidelines and whether or not there is good regarding them and what is the bad and what can we change about it. Even if the judge gave them the 11 months, the highest in the sentencing, it's wrong. It's wrong on all reasons because the family's got to live till the day they die knowing that their son's life was taken.
Just such a sad story when you think about this family, like Pete Lucido said, having to go to his gravesite for so many years for the rest of their lives, just knowing that this man who killed him may only get a very, very limited time unless the judge decides to go above the sentencing guidelines. Now, the defendant is going to be sentenced in October of this year, just in a couple of months. We will see, of course, what happens. And, of course, the family is likely to give victim impact statements. Whether or not that affects what the judge decides, that remains to be seen. Reporting live, Camille and Mary, Fox 2 News.
I'm curious, Camille, did Prosecutor Lucido say what kind of sentence he thinks is appropriate in this case?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question, but it's also a tough question. This was initially a 15-year felony, but then the judge in the initial case threw that out and then went with a 5-year felony. But then when the suspect, Martin Smith, took the plea deal, it goes with 5 years, but then a 0 to 11-month guideline.
Wow, that system sounds hella racist. That's like the most racist thing I've ever heard in my life. I mean, gosh, like, there should be rioting in the streets over that. He starts off with 15 years. He goes through 2 judges, and then is knocked down to 0 to 11 months. Oh my God, this is like, it's Jim Crow all over again.
This was initially a 15-year felony, but then the judge in the initial case threw that out and then went with a 5-year felony. But then when the suspect, Martin Smith, took the plea deal, it goes with 5 years, but then a 0 to 11-month guideline. He didn't say specifically because it's hard. How do you put a price tag on someone's life? And even though this man didn't maliciously do anything with intent, it is still reckless. And people have to be held accountable for that. I think that's something that the Macomb County prosecutor really wants to make clear and really set the example that we need to be careful when we're on the roadways and we need to slow down and we need to pay attention. We need to not be texting on our phone or talking on our phone and really pay attention to what's going on around us and who is around us, especially in these construction zones. Monica Hewell, back to you.
The hunt actually began months ago for this fugitive in North Dakota, but as you mentioned, it came to an end today with a police chase in Warren, and now the suspect in custody faces plenty of felony charges. The view from above shows you what it took to arrest this man, Kamari Kennedy. He was pulled by police from his gray van and taken into custody. But the hunt for Kennedy has been going on for months.
We've been looking for this fugitive since June of 2021.
On June 3rd, Kennedy allegedly killed his girlfriend more than 1,000 miles away in Minot, North Dakota.
Shot the female, his girlfriend, in the head, took her body, put it in the trunk.
Police say he attempted to cover up his crimes by burning the car and then their house.
Right after all of this occurred, Kamari Kennedy disappeared from Minot, and we couldn't find him.
Beginning the cross-country manhunt that would end at Groesbeck and 8 Mile in Warren. U.S. Marshals say they first found him in Detroit, where Kennedy does have ties and a criminal past.
At the end of the day, he has a homicide warrant. He has multiple other felony warrants. He has a violent criminal history in the past. He needed to go to jail.
Who's shocked by that? Who's shocked that this guy's out? He just roaming the streets, man, with like all this like bag. We're not talking about shoplifting, man. We're not talking about indecent exposure, man. Disorderly conduct, man. Okay? We talking about it's brothers out here in the world that's just they got a lot on their plate, man. And when you're victimized by one of them, or you find out if you survive, the pain, like knowing, like, dang, like, I've been thinking that the system was racist, but actually it's the other way around. It's very, 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 very kind to brothers.
At the end of the day, he has a homicide warrant. He has multiple other felony warrants. He has a violent criminal history in the past. He needed to go to jail.
But as law enforcement moved in,
Kennedy takes off at a high rate of speed. This guy is obviously wanted for murder, violent crimes. So the pursuit ensued.
soon Macomb County Sheriff's deputies and other agencies got involved, running him off the road and into custody. A deputy and a marshal slightly injured in the whole process.
His hand was just minor injuries. He took it in to get seen for minor injuries. One of the deputy marshals went in just for minor injuries, just for precautions.
All in all, no small effort to track him down and make the arrest.
It's all about holding people accountable, and now we turn it over to the court and we let them figure out, and the citizens figure out, is this somebody that committed this crime, and let that process play out.
And this is something that I'm really tired of. The fact that a community that has so much crime and so much violence, people don't know basically how the system works. You don't even watch Law and Order. The people are represented by two different, separate but equal groups: the cops and then the prosecutors. So the cops have done their job. I promise you, if you go to the Sun Belt, the Stand, the average person thinks that it's like 48 Hours or Lethal Weapon or Bad Boys, where the cop is just works a 24-hour shift and he makes all the rules and they arrest you and then that's it. Now you're in the hands of the other part of the law enforcement, the prosecutor and the judge. So the cops, they have no control over you, what happens to you. All they can do is arrest you. And it's frightening how many people, now the thugs and the criminals know this, but how many squares, how many square sons have no idea how this works. They just think, it's racist. No. The cop just arrests you. Then you it's over. He might never see you in life again. Unless he goes, because most of these get pled down so they don't have to testify in court. Most of these get pled down or thrown out. So the cop never sees the guy again. Unless he arrests him again. But the odds of that, you got these cities, you got 4,000 cops. Cities like New York where you got 10, 20,000 cops. You never see the guy again. That cop, that particular cop, never sees the guy again.
It's all about holding people accountable, and now we turn it over to the court and we let them figure out, and the citizens figure out, is this somebody that committed this crime, and let that process play out.
Speaking of that process, Kennedy is expected to appear in federal court as early as tomorrow for being a two-time parole absconder. Then begins the process of extraditing him back to North Dakota to answer to those murder charges.
North Dakota, boy. Who remember I did that story in North Dakota a while ago? I may put the link in the description box. God, it's coming to North Dakota now. Yikes.
Speaking of that process, Kennedy is expected to appear in federal court as early as tomorrow for being a two-time parole absconder. Then begins the process of extraditing him back to North Dakota to answer to those murder charges. Reporting live tonight, Dave Spencer, Fox 2 News.
So, Dave, they've got one suspect. Is there anyone else the feds are looking for in connection to this case?
Yeah, this is a case that spans many months, but they say they have their primary suspect in custody. That's not to say that others won't be charged in connection with it, but for the main crime, they think they have their man.
All right.